So it would be helpful for me to know what your experience is with Indigo, even if it's, I just like looking at it. Do you have experience with any kind of an indigo vat, the dyeing with indigo? And what are your expectations for this class? Does anyone want to take it away?
Sure. I have been dyeing in indigo for a few years. I took a class at Local Cloth, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, that Joyce was one of the teachers, and we made a thiox vat, and we dyed in a number of other vats. I also took a class from Amy Putansu, and we did a ferrous vat. I really want to be as good at maintaining an organic vat as I am at doing a thiox vat. That's the main thing for me. I love indigo. I've been dyeing already today. I dye a lot of indigo. But for me, maintaining an organic vat's just, I don't know the tricks of that. So that's what I'm looking for.
Great. Thank you.
I could pretty much ditto what you just said, except I haven't used it probably as much as you have. I've done the thiox, and I did the indigo group at Local Cloth occasionally, but I haven't done it in a while, and I really would like to learn how to maintain the other vat,
right?
The fertility, and yeah, to be able to maintain it and get in more dyeing.
Thanks.
I'm a little bit less than that. I've helped a friend who does workshops do a setup, and then I did some dyeing that next day, only the one time. Yeah, so, and yeah, I do a lot of dyeing. It would be nice to try to maintain that.
Great. Judy?
Yeah, I took a workshop a number of years ago, probably close to 10, a convergence with on vegetal dye, and among all the different dyes we did over those 3 days, we did one thiox vat. Mm-hmm. and I brought some home and maintained it for a while, and then went on to other things and never went back. So I would just like to, I like the idea of an organic vat better, and so I want to learn how to do that.
Great. Marion? I'm just looking at my little 4-square thing here.
I have no experience dyeing in indigo. I grew up doing grit dye, and then a year and a half ago I took a natural dye workshop, but we didn't do indigo, and that was at Echo View Fiber Mill. It was just a weekend, so I want to learn how to do indigo.
Cool. Super. Lenora?
I've seen it done. I like your shirt. Other than that, I'm a total newbie, so so yeah, I'm just gonna kind of get a feel for it this time and probably come up with more questions next time. So
okay. Great. And Sharon?
I have tried pre-reduced indigo, but have not had good results with it. So I wanted to do a real vat.
Right. Okay. Super. I think I heard from everybody so far? Okay. So, thank you all for coming. I'm sorry for the difficulties. I hope there won't be any more. So just to kind of give you an overview, today I'm going to talk about the difference between the different kind of vats. Somebody mentioned the pre-reduced vat. So we have kind of the spectrum is the pre-reduced vat to the fermentation vat. And the thing that we're going to learn is kind of in the middle, but I'll talk about those. I'll talk about supplies and equipment. I'll talk a little bit about chemistry. I feel it's important not to shy away from that, because to really understand your vat and to be able to troubleshoot, you have to understand a little bit of underlying chemistry. It just comes with the territory. Indigo is a very, very different type of dyeing. I'll show you how to make the starter tonight, and then later on tonight you will put that starter in your bucket. And then tomorrow, my idea was that we would all dye our bandanas with a little bit of shibori. If you don't want to do that tomorrow and you have something else that you want to dye, that's perfectly fine. But I thought that would just be a fun way to test our vat. So in the morning, we will all check our vats. I'll show you how to do that. If anybody's vat is not right, we'll talk about what we need to do. We'll do our dyeing, and we'll talk about troubleshooting the vat and then questions that you have. I know a couple people have already sent me questions, so we'll talk about those tomorrow. Okay, and I think it's best, if you wouldn't mind now, just muting yourself. Whenever you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself. It's just easier if there's any ambient noise, and I apologize if there's ambient noise from my end, because I do have my 2 grandsons here. They're outside, so you might hear them. And if you want to see what I'm doing better, you put it on speaker view, and then you don't see everybody else, but you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Okay. Oh, by the way, yes, the class will be recorded. Note to self, start recording. Sorry to get up in your face. Oh, I guess we'll do.
Joyce, I started it.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I think the thing to do is just start with your little bundle of materials, so we can look at that. If you've gotten your own materials, you can just get yours out at the same time. So you've got your indigo, so that's the blue powder. I don't have it in little bags. I just have it in cupcake papers, which is a really good way. I'm just going to put myself on speaker view if I can. Sorry. These things are very good for weighing out chemicals, by the way, so you're not using some expensive thing. I just use cupcake papers. So you've got your beautiful blue indigo powder, which is the color you want to achieve in the end, but unfortunately, indigo in this form cannot be used for dyeing, and that's the whole thing that we have to learn about, how to change this into a form that can be used for dyeing. You have your calcium hydroxide, also known as calc or lime, and you have your fructose. So those are the only 3 things that you need for an indigo vat. You also have your bandana that's ready to dye, so you don't have to wash it or anything, it's ready to go, and your little notebook. So that's what's in your materials. So different kinds of vats. Somebody mentioned the pre-reduced indigo. So you can buy little kits that are pre-reduced. That indigo did not come from a plant. It was made in a lab somewhere. It's the same exact chemical as the indigo from plants, but it didn't come from a plant. And it's been chemically pre-reduced, and we'll talk about reduction a little bit later. Those work. I'm surprised that, Sharon, you said it didn't work well. Usually you get a very nice blue color, but it's not indigo. I mean, it's not from a plant, as I said. It's good, like we did that for my grandson's shower party. We all indigo dyed little onesies because it's really pretty foolproof. But it is just like using RIT dye in a way, because it's just a chemical dye. Then the next kind of order down is a thiox vat, which some of you have used and I've used before. So that's a chemical reducing agent. And again, we'll get to reduction in a minute. It's a pretty heavy duty, stinky, somewhat toxic chemical, but it works well. I mean, you're gonna get a very reliable vat using thiox. The thing I don't like about it, because I'm not against chemicals in general, is there's very little nuance in the thiox vat. You put something in there and you take it out in a minute, And if you have enough indigo in there, it's blue. So if you want to get any kind of a gradation or subtler colors, or you want to build up colors, you can't do that in a Thiox vat. It's kind of, it's a yes or a no kind of binary vat. But it is reliable, but that's not what we're talking about today. So today, kind of going down to the next order are the natural, organic, and again, I do have a chemistry background, so I feel a little bit bad calling things organic or chemical because everything's chemical and everything's organic. But we're using things that have come from nature to do our reducing. So the indigo stays the same, the calx stays the same, the alkaline. So the only thing we're changing is the reducing agent. So in our case, we're using sugar. Fructose comes from fruit. It's what's called a monosaccharide. It's a single sugar, and it's going to do the reducing for us. You can use other things that have sugar in them, like bananas. I think Susan, when I wrote bandana, she thought I said banana. But you can use bananas. That's a good way to make a vat. You can use dates. You can use a lot of different things. You can use henna. Somebody said they had used an iron vat. You can use iron. You can use spent madder if you dye with madder roots. You can use the madder in your vat to do the reduction. So there's a whole lot of things within this category that will cause reduction. But today we're using fructose simply because it's very quick, it's very easy, it's very reliable. The next one down the line is a fermentation vat. It doesn't use a sugar or anything. It uses a living creature, a bacteria to do the reducing. I have a failed fermentation vat in my basement. It's super stinky. It got a little moldy. Somebody else asked about mold. I've never had mold except on my fermentation vat. So I don't feel qualified to really guide you through a fermentation vat. But in some ways, I guess that's the goal if you really want a very non-chemical vat. Okay, so that's kind of the continuum of vats. And the one we're going to do today is the fructose vat. Okay, so a little bit of the chemistry. So as I said, the indigo that we see in our kits is this beautiful blue color. The problem with this is that it's insoluble. And a way to think about that is like if you put a very, very fine sand in water and you stirred it up and you even heated it, no matter what you did within reason, it's not going to dissolve in the water. And that's the same with this indigo. Even though it's super fine powder, it will not dissolve in water. And if something is not soluble in water or a given solvent, it cannot dye. So the whole thing about the vat is to turn this blue, insoluble indigo pigment into a soluble pigment. So that's why we need the other two ingredients. So we first of all need to change the pH of the vat using the calcium hydroxide. And that's going to change the vat to an alkaline environment. So the pH range goes from acidic to neutral to alkaline. 7 is neutral, right in the middle. Water is 7. Things that are acidic are like vinegar, orange juice, coffee, Coca-Cola. Things that are alkaline tend to be like detergents, ammonia, things like that. So the chemical reaction that we need to happen simply happens better at a higher or more alkaline pH. The reason for that is pretty complicated and we don't really need to understand it. But any chemical reaction has what's called an optimal pH, which means a pH that it's going to work best. And for this reaction, it works best at a high pH. So what does that mean exactly? It means anywhere from 9 to 11. Some of our fibers are not going to be too happy at the high end of the pH, so we might need to keep it a little bit lower. Wool, for instance, it will change the texture of the wool if the pH gets too high. The indigo likes it, but the fiber is not crazy about it. Cotton doesn't really matter. You can have a higher pH. Okay, and then the third ingredient is fructose. So the fructose is called the reducing agent. So a reducing agent reduces another chemical. So there's a type of reaction in chemistry, and this is on your handout, called a redox reaction. And redox simply means reduction, oxidation, because those two reactions have to happen in tandem. So when one thing gets reduced, something else gets oxidized. And what that is an exchange of electrons. Again, you don't really have to go that deeply into the chemistry, but it is important to know that how to make that reduction happen, and that it needs to go back the other way to oxidation. So when we reduce the indigo, we change it chemically, and it turns from this beautiful blue color into another color. And that can be kind of green or yellow or brown or even reddish, but it's not blue anymore. And that's how you know that your vat has been reduced, when it's no longer blue. So it seems kind of funny, but the vat must not be blue. If your vat is blue, you're not going to get any color. So once it becomes changed, once it becomes reduced, it goes to another color, but it's soluble, so it can be used for dyeing. Of course, we're not interested in some brown, yellow, muddy color in our fiber. We want to get that blue back. Luckily, that's the easiest part of the whole thing. All we need to do is bring our fiber out of the vat into air or to water where there's plenty of oxygen. So 20% of the air is oxygen, and even in the water, there's lots of oxygen. So as soon as you bring that fiber out, the indigo will reoxidate and it will turn back to blue. And once it's in the air, it's not going to get re-reduced. It can't go back the other way. So once it comes out and it turns blue, it's blue.
Can I
So
ask a quick question, Joyce?
Yes.
What about silk? You spoke to wool and cotton. How does silk behave with the higher pH?
Okay. Silk is a little bit more forgiving, especially if you're using like raw silk. But if you're using a fine silk, it's not going to be as happy. It's probably okay. You're not going to get into a pH that it's going to damage your silk. It's more the wool. It just, unless you're using a superwash wool, actually, then you don't have to worry. But if you're using a non-superwash wool, the little fibers are going to get changed so that it'll get kind of a sticky quality to it. It won't be terrible, but it won't be as soft as when you put it in.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so that's a little bit of the chemistry. Does anybody have questions about that? When we come to like troubleshooting, it'll be important to remember a few of these things. The color of the vat will show you whether the indigo is reduced or oxidized. The pH of the vat will tell you whether it's a environment that is going to favor that reaction of reducing the indigo. And if it's gone back to blue, you'll know that you just need to add more reducing agent. If you want to get a deep dive into indigo chemistry, there's lots and lots of things online, but I don't want to go on and on about that. Okay, so is everybody, did you have your stuff in front of you? Because we're going to make our starter vats now. So what you need is the jar with a tight fitting lid. I have this plastic jar that you put some marbles or stones in.
I need to run out and get my marbles.
Okay.
I'll be back in 1 minute.
Now I just put this little bit of netting over it so that when I dump out my indigo, I don't put my marbles into my starter jar, because I have marbles in like every vat. I have like 4 vats going and they all have marbles in them because I keep losing my marbles. But that's not necessary. You can just be careful when you tip out your indigo. So you need that. You need your lime or calcium. I think we'll start with that. If you have a little bit of warm water nearby, that would be lovely. So I'm going to use my big jar to start with. And I'm going to put a little bit of water in the bottom of the jar. If you want to put a mask on, you can. This is non-toxic. You can buy this lime in the grocery store. Pickling lime works fine. You have a little bit higher grade that I ordered from Mawa, but you can use pickling lime that you buy in the hardware store or the grocery store. So you're going to tip in about half of your little envelope of lime. It doesn't matter that it's exact because we're going to use the rest of it in a minute. So just tip that into your jar. And stir. And then you can add a little bit more water. It may or may not completely dissolve with this amount of water. So it kind of has that milky appearance. Okay, now you're gonna put all of your indigo into your smaller jar with your marbles or your stones. So just tip the whole thing in. Got about a third of the way, doesn't really matter, with your water. So what we're doing now is we're hydrating the indigo. So indigo is it's so insoluble that it's called hydrophobic, which means it's afraid of water. So it will just stay dry. So you want to try to at least get it wet like a paste. So you're just gonna stir it up with your marbles. Top is leaking.
Sorry, I had to go in search of pebbles. What did she do first?
So you put the indigo in the jar.
Yep.
With your pebbles, with a little bit of water. Shake, shake, shake. If you don't have a tight fitting lid, just be careful because mine is leaking. I guess because of the mesh. I'm just going to grab a paper towel while you're shaking. How's everybody doing?
I had everything set up outside under the shed,
Yeah.
and it's pouring down rain, and I couldn't hear. So I've come in the house, and now everything's out in the shed. So I'm taking notes, and I'll make mine later.
Okay. Okay, so once you've shaken it, you're really supposed to shake it for about 5 minutes, but you're gonna get it done. Then you're gonna pour that into your big jar. And don't worry if your marbles fall in there. Not gonna affect anything. You just won't have the marbles for next time. And then I usually add a little bit more water in there because there's always some indigo. I just use the same jar. So if there's a little bit of indigo in there, I know it'll go into the next batch.
Joyce,
Yeah?
we have still some watery powder in my jar. Should I get it all out into the big one?
Yeah, just add a little bit more water in there. Try to get as much as you can, because you don't want to waste any of that good indigo.
Okay. Right.
So hopefully you can see in your jar, you should be able to see the little fine particles of indigo. And they are not dissolving.
Are you still in the same jar, Joyce?
So the little jar was for hydrating the indigo.
Yeah?
Big jar, we've already put half the calcium in, the calc or the lime. And then we're going to add the indigo to this. First you make your lime water, and then you put your indigo water in.
Okay, so about the same amount of water with the calcium?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. So you can see how much I've got in my jar right now. It can be a lot more because we're going to fill up this whole jar. So go ahead actually and add some more water. So I just really want you to look at what this looks like though, because this is an unreduced, this would be what an unreduced vat looks like. So this is, if you get something that looks like this, you know that it needs to be reduced. Okay, so now if you're caught up, you can add your fructose. You can add the whole thing. Just put a little bit in at a time and stir.
Joyce?
Yep.
Did we add the rest of our calc already?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay, good. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something.
Yeah. And then you can top up your jar. I don't have enough water out here.
Your jar looks bigger than mine. I might not have a very big enough jar.
Okay.
Because it's full.
Right. As long as when you add the fructose, it didn't like seize up. Can you still stir it?
I'm adding
Okay.
little.
Is if you can't get enough water, sometimes there's too much solid chemicals and it gets hard.
Yeah.
But don't worry about it. It'll be fine. The amount of water doesn't really matter. It's just, it makes it harder to stir if you don't have enough water. Can
I
you
see.
see your jar? Can you hold it up?
Yeah, it's 24 ounces, I think. Is that?
Are you able to stir it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Then don't worry.
And then add the whole bag of fructose.
Yeah, that's when things might get a little bit hard to stir.
Right, so this is half of the calcium, and
Yes.
I add, and what do I add to the, I add all of the
All of
indigo?
that you've hydrated.
Yeah,
Yeah, just pour that in.
but not the rocks, leave the rocks behind.
Yeah, if some rocks get in, don't worry.
Do we need to keep stirring it?
No.
Okay.
My lime is not totally dissolved. You don't want to stir it too much because, of course, when you stir, you're introducing oxygen.
And we are adding all the fructose just bit by bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can actually try to add more of the lime. Just sometimes, as I said, it gets really thick. So if you have a small jar, we'll wait until we put it into the big vat. But if you have a big jar, as long as you can stir it, it's fine. Okay, so right now your jar will be milky, and it'll have bits of blue powder, and things will not look dissolved in there. So it has to just sit. So once you've done your stirring, just put it aside. You can put something over it. If you have the top to the jar, that's fine, or a cloth or anything. So one other thing I want to do right now, just so that we understand how to do it, is to check the pH. Everybody can get their little pH papers, whatever you have, out. So there's lots of different pH papers, and I sent some of you might have different ones because for some reason pH paper is like toilet paper. It's hard to find these days.
Sorry, one quick question. Did you just add a little bit more calc or all?
Keep adding it if you can. If it gets too thick and hard to stir, you can wait until you put it into the big vat.
Okay, yeah, mine is fine for stirring, so I don't need to add any more.
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, you can add it. Yeah, you can add the rest.
Oh, the rest of the calc. Okay.
Okay, does everybody have their pH paper out?
I do. Mine is streaky on the bottom. Is that a problem?
Nope, nope.
Okay. Ready.
The thing about the lime is the calcium, a little bit of the calcium is going to come out of its chemical compound, and you're going to get a little bit of sediment on the bottom no matter what you do. You get less sediment if you make the lime water rather than just adding the powdered calcium. But you always get a sediment. Okay, so you're just going to dip your pH paper in your jar, and then you're going to hold it up to the color indicator on whatever your pH paper bottle looks like. And you're going to try to see which one it's closest to. You want to read it pretty immediately. So mine is 10. What does everybody else have?
12.
Mine?
Sorry, do I put the fructose in next, Joyce? I have my computer obviously in the wrong place compared to where my sink is.
Yeah, add all the,
Look at the color of mine.
yeah,
You add all the fructose?
yes.
Mine's also
What are
very,
you using, Susan?
My pH is like 13 and my jar is really blue.
Right. What kind of indigo is that?
It's organic indigo
Okay.
from Botanical Colors.
Okay. Well, should be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Okay.
Is it starting to settle?
It's pretty. It's kind of like watered down mud texture wise.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
when it may not do much until you put it in the big vat. So here's
Gotcha.
one that's already.
Yeah. No, that's what I would have expected. That's the reason I asked. Okay.
Did you put some more of the lime in here or no?
You can do it now if you have enough room in your jar. If it starts to get really thick and hard to stir, you can wait until you put it in
Good voice. This is Halcyon.
the big vat. Hi, Halcyon. Are you just coming on? Hello.
Yeah, I just made it in. I don't know what the problem was. Did everybody else make it in? Because I had every time time I tried to get in, it said the host is in another meeting.
I don't know. Well,
We all
Until you
had
said-
that.
we didn't all, well,
What?
some
I
people,
had that too.
Okay, well, I just made it, so I'm way behind, but I've
Okay.
got all my materials.
okay. Well, I'm recording it. So what I can do is send you the recording, and we're just getting the starter jar set up tonight.
Okay,
And then we'll have the vat in the morning, or we can stay on a little bit longer after everybody's done. Maybe that's a good thing to do, so I can get you started with your jar. Who else has checked their pH?
I did.
okay.
It's like 12.
Okay,
It's really dark.
It strips didn't come with the color coding thing. My friend gave them to me. So how should I
wow.
proceed?
Well, alkaline pHs tend to be blue. I can tell you that much, and
So I'm going for a shade of blue.
you can't tell for sure. But so neutral is kind of a yellowy green.
Yeah.
And then if it's getting into navy blue, you're in a good territory.
Okay.
I can't reach all the way down into the jar, Joyce.
Well, just
You-
get your spoon and touch it to the paper.
Oh, okay.
That'll work. It should change color immediately. Did that work? That looks like navy blue. That's good.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
11.
It looks,
Yeah.
it looks black.
So you probably got 12. That's as high as this indicator goes. 14 is the highest it can go, but most indicators are going to stop at 12. Okay, so that's your starter jar. Has anybody noticed a color change or a difference in the character of the liquid? Does it look clearer on top? Kind of.
No.
Anybody? So
No, it's just like black coffee.
okay, add some more water. So I am refreshing my vat, so I have half the amount of stuff, which is probably why mine looks different. So don't worry. Everything is fine. You've just got a lot more indigo than I'm using because I'm not starting from a fresh vat. If I did that every time, I'd have 10 vats instead of 5. So I have half the amount of everything that you guys have. So just
Pretty dark.
I would top it up as much as you can and just let it sit.
When you say top it up as much as you can, should I go up to here?
To the top to here. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm so glad my husband's not here right now. I'm on the kitchen counter.
John, are you still there?
He doesn't appear to be.
Okay. Okay, so has everybody got everything in their jar? Does anybody need more time? Is anybody there?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm good.
thanks. Okay, so later on tonight, and really you could do it as soon as you sign off, it doesn't really matter. It's nice to be able to see the color changing, but if it's not happening, you know, after you have dinner, don't worry about it. You're gonna do the next step. Maybe I'll wait till Judy gets back. Judy, are you there?
I'm close.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, So the next step is you're going to get your bucket and you're going to fill it. So here's my bucket. Oh, it's a little bit heavy. Oh. So you're going to fill it about to here. So that's about 3/4 full with water. Warm water is better, but if that's a problem, you can just use tap water, temperature water. So you're going to fill that with water, and then you're going to put in the contents of your starter jar. So this is my vat that I am refreshing. So got liquid in it, but it's not water. Then you're going to get your stick.
Joyce,
Yes,
can I ask a question?
yes.
When you put your starter jar into the big bucket, you want it to be this color.
It doesn't really matter what color it is. It's nice if you can see some signs of reduction,
Okay,
because it's nice to just see that happening. But if
okay.
it's still blue, don't worry about it.
Just put it in.
Just put it in.
Okay,
But it's going to take, it's probably going to take an hour for you to see much of anything happening.
okay.
That amount of indigo. Okay, then with your stick, or if you have a really long spoon, so it's hard to show. Hopefully you can see from here. You're going to stir it in this particular way. So keeping your stick perpendicular to the bucket. When you go around and around and around, you create a vortex. And that's the way you always want to stir your indigo vat. The reason for that is it introduces less oxygen. So you're going to put the contents of your jar into your bucket and stir. And I would stir it for a good 3 minutes. And then ideally, maybe before you go to bed tonight, you're going to come back and stir it again in that same way.
Joyce, quick question.
Yes.
Am I still supposed to have a half a packet of this calcium?
You can put that in now, or you can wait until you tip your starter jar in and then add the rest of the calcium. Some people do it that way. Some people put it all in the starter jar. It really depends on how much stuff you've got in your jar and how thick it is. Either way is fine.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to put it in. You're going to stir once for 3 minutes. You're going to leave it alone for an hour and then come back and stir it again. And then you're going to put the top on and you're going to leave it somewhere, wherever is the warmer place in your house or outside your house. If you've got the air conditioner blasting. The thing about chemical reactions, they always happen faster with more temperature, with more heat. So, questions about that?
I'm just gonna say what I think you said, because I had my head near the tub with the water running. So I did my 3/4 bucket of warm water. I just poured in my mixture.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta get my stick and stir for a minute, you said?
Right, 3 minutes.
2 minutes, okay.
So here's my jar. You can see there's still a lot of junk at the bottom, so I'm gonna keep rinsing out the jar and trying to get everything in there so I don't lose anything.
Joyce, I have another question.
Yeah.
Is this not a good idea to do in your bathtub? Would it stain?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay.
Unless you want a blue bathtub.
Okay.
Yeah, and indigo does stain your hands. I should probably have gloves on at this point. I didn't get too much on me, but. So are we good about what to do with the starter jar and the vat? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Good. I'm going to move this out of the way if I can. And then I just want to talk to you about getting ready for dyeing tomorrow, because there may be something that you would want to do tonight. So one of the beauties of indigo is you do not need to mordant your fiber, but it does need to be clean. It needs to be scoured. If you're going to do your bandana that's ready to dye, it's pre-scoured. If you want to dye anything else, it has to be scoured beforehand. There's directions on your handout, but briefly, scouring cotton or cellulose fiber means that you boil it in washing soda and citropol. Protein fiber, you want to simmer with something like Orvis paste or a mild detergent. That's why I gave you something that was ready to go, because I didn't want you to have to stress out about getting anything ready for tomorrow morning. But if you have fiber that you have scoured or you know is good for dyeing, other than your bandana, the only thing you need to do is wet it out, which means you need to, I'm going to show you how to dye yarn tomorrow because it's a little bit different. So I'm just going to put this in this bowl with some water overnight. One of the things with indigo is it doesn't dye with a chemical bond like every other natural dye or chemical dye. It has a much different way of adhering to the fiber. And it's super important that the fibers are opened up. And with wool, it needs to be totally wetted out. And if you work with wool, you probably know it's very resistant to water. That's one of its beauties, right? You can go out with a nice Icelandic sweater and in the rain and you won't get wet. So wool takes much longer to wet out and to open up the fibers, unless you're using superwash, because those scales have been taken off. So if you want to dye some yarn, just put it in some water tonight and let it sit. For the bandana, we're going to do shibori, which can be anywhere from, you know, very, very complex stitch shibori to something very simple. So I'm going to just show you some really easy ways to get your bandana ready. Probably a lot of you have done shibori before and you know what you're doing, but just in case. So here's the bandana. One very easy thing to do is just to fold it, to accordion fold it. Away. That would be quicker. So now it's all accordion folded, and then I can just put some rubber bands around it all the way down. And I'm going to get a nice resist. So I'll get 2 resists from the folding and from the rubber band. So I would just put rubber bands down at, if you wanted to, you know, even increments, you know, maybe about 2 inches apart. This needs to be wetted out too. So either put it in tonight or put it in early in the morning. But it also needs to be wetted out. So just in a bowl with plain old water. One of my favorite indigo patterns is the shirt I'm wearing, which is also super easy. You just take a rock or a marble. And you just put the rock in. And again, you either tie a string around it, or I have these little rubber bands. Put a rubber band around the rock. And it's going to make these little rings. I've given you, I think, 2 or 3 websites to look at with very, 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 very easy shibori preparations. Really, it will take you no more than 10 minutes. If you want to do more, if you want to stay up and stitch some shibori, that's fantastic, but it really won't take you very long to do that. And as I said, if you don't want to use this is actually a really nice bandana. If you don't want to do it and be rushed, that's fine too. If you just want to test the vat tomorrow and not dye anything, that's okay too. Because we're going to do this anyway, we're all going to test our vat with a little piece of fabric. So hopefully everybody's got something around the house they could use. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it's a natural fiber. So cotton, silk, linen, it doesn't matter. Anything will work in the indigo except polyester. So what I do every time before I start a dye session is to test it with a test strip, and then I keep that in my journal. One more thing before you wet out whatever it is you're going to dye, unless it's just a little piece of fabric, you want to weigh it before you put it in the water and record the weight. The reason you do that is because you have a finite amount of indigo in your vat. And as it says on the instructions, it will dye about 2 indigo. And when it's no longer dyeing, you're going to know that, oh, I've just run out of indigo. It's not that it's not reduced or I have to do something else. I need to refresh my vat. But we'll talk tomorrow about how to know if your vat is not dyeing correctly, how to diagnose what the problem is. But this just gives you some information to help you along the way to know what's going on. Okay, does everybody feel ready for what they're going to do tomorrow? Are there any questions about that?
I have a wool question.
Yes.
Because I think the pH from my jar was running at about 11 or 12. And at what point, I'm assuming when I put that in the bucket, is that going to change somewhat? Or will it be the same pH?
A fresh vat always has a higher pH than if you dye with it. Every time you dye with it, and every time the indigo becomes a little bit more oxidized, the pH goes down. So the highest pH is always going to be a fresh vat. So if after we put it, we'll check the pH tomorrow morning. If it's still too high for you to feel comfortable, you can just dye some cotton or something until the pH comes down a little bit. Or you can just do a very brief dip. I mean, you can put the yarn in briefly and it's going to be fine if you rinse it right away. And put it in an acid vinegar bath afterwards to use the pH.
And I'm getting a little glitchy here, so I didn't hear, but what is the upper range that wool is happy at pH wise?
Well, I would say 11.
Okay.
I mean, I would put it in at 11, but I wouldn't go for navy blue.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'll talk also about how to get darker colors, because again, it's a whole different ball of wax with indigo. You don't put more indigo in to get darker colors, you do more dips. But all that is for tomorrow. So I think that's all I had for this evening. More questions?
So we are going to wait 1 hour and then do the 3-minute stir again. And that's all tonight? Just the one more time stirring?
One more stir before you go to bed would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Vortex. Once you get it going, you'll see that, it looks like a drain going down.
Okay.
Can we do the pouring of the vat now?
Can you do that now? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then stir after dinner and then that's it.
Yeah, when you first put the starter jar in, give that a really good stir, and then one more time.
And then we also put in the rest of the lime?
Yes, if you haven't already done that, yes.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Does anybody's starter jar, has it started to look any different?
It's in the vat now, so I can't see.
Oh, you put it in the vat. Okay, that's good.
I
Yeah,
thought that's what you
in
told
that.
us to do.
Yeah, you could let it sit if you wanted to see if it was changing. It's just interesting to I think to see the change, but that's fine. Yeah, that's what you're going to do anyway.
So Joyce, that's one question I have. I prepared the jar and it looks like the color's changing, but you said to let it sit for an hour until it oxidizes. So do you wait
We do.
until then to add it to the 5-gallon bucket?
You don't need to, but it's reducing just to get our language.
You don't need,
Do you have the jar? Can I see what it looks like?
okay, we do think.
Yeah. Okay, so it's still blue. Yeah, you can put it in the big vat now. You don't have to wait. I just think it's cool to see the change, but you don't have to. In terms of the final result of your vat, it won't matter.
Okay.
The starter just kind of jump starts the reduction process. It's just not far enough along for you to see. Okay, with that you
So we're just gonna fold or stitch or whatever, and then wet out our thing overnight, right?
if you want to do that. I mean, you
Sure.
don't have to do that, but that's a fun way to see it because, again, one of the beauties of indigo is because it's not boiled like any other natural dye. You're able to get a resist just by folding a piece of fabric and putting a rubber band around it. It doesn't spend that long in the vat, and the vat is basically room temperature or maybe just a little bit like bath water warm. So that's one of the beauties of indigo, that we're able to do that. You can do batik in indigo for the same reason because the wax isn't going to melt. Anybody wants to do a batik painting tonight?
Get to work.
Right. Okay, well, I'll see you all at 10 tomorrow. I'll be sending you another Zoom invitation. I hope it works.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, you guys.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Thanks, Joyce.
Joyce,
Halcyon, are you
Joyce,
still
could
there?
you say? Yeah, no one else had a problem
Well,
going into it?